Before round 2 and 3 of the NFL draft kicks off tonight, be live on Twitch for that, by the way, link down below, twitch.tv/Bengal. I want to say this is not a big board. This is not a player rankings. Otherwise, we would just have Bryce Young one. We'd go down the board just doing player rankings. That's not what this video is. This, when you talk about ranking every first round pick, you take a look at the player they got, obviously, but you take a look at where they got them, the perceived value, because that's all we can go on, and then also the other players that were on the board. A good counter to that is that they didn't want those other players on the board. They wanted who they wanted because they fit their scheme. They have a plan for them. Yeah, it's all well and good, but everyone can't be an A-plus grade, right? I liked a lot of these picks, and some of these players down the board, just like in the case of Najee Harris years ago, I like Najee Harris a lot. I just didn't exactly love the fit for the Steelers at, I think it was 24, and the same way I didn't love Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 for Detroit. And so Jahmyr Gibbs kicks us off at 31, and I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Lions fans are going to get on me just like the Steelers fans did. Well, if you think he's good, how is it a bad pick? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm not necessarily saying it was a bad pick, although I could. I am technically saying it's the worst pick of the first round, but I really like him. So this is, I hope, doesn't age well, even though it's not really about Jahmyr Gibbs. It's more about the process of drafting him at number 12. And yes, maybe the Jets would have taken him at 15. That's a popular rumor that has been circulating. But if you wanted a running back, just take Bijan Robinson at 6. Okay, maybe you like the guy that's really, the hybrid receiver, running back. Maybe you put him in the slot. Maybe he moves all around for you. Led Alabama in receiving yards. Great player. Home run speed. Electric player. Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome. But you let Jamal go for essentially nothing. You sign a huge contract with David Montgomery, really in relation to every other running back that we saw get signed in free agency. So I just don't think it was the best use of resources, the best use of funds. You don't expect to be picking top 10 very often if you're the Lions. They really are moving in the right direction. So to trade out of that spot, not really get a ton of value back. We'll see what it turns into, obviously. And then get Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. It just seemed a little rich for my blood, but I really do like him. We have Emmanuel Forbes at 30. Another player that I like. I just think that, Brett Coleman made a good point on Twitter about, the ball production maybe not playing up to the next level. A lot of them are tip picks. I kind of think that, he's got a good nose for the football. Knows right where to be. The pick sixes are a good indication of that. It doesn't mean he's an elite lockdown cover corner. And I think a lot of what this at 30 does for me is the fact that Christian Gonzalez was there, and I really liked his tape. Now, apparently with Christian Gonzalez, they're worried about his competitive nature or whatever. But going to New England, I'm not really super concerned about that. Whereas Emmanuel Forbes is like the exact opposite. This guy's a dog. This guy's as competitive as it gets. He doesn't care that he's 166 pounds. But that's another thing that I think is important. I'm not sure we've ever seen a player this light get drafted in the first round, and I'm this light. Like, I get it. I completely understand the irony of this, but it's kind of uncharted territory, and even though you could say that about Bryce Young, I think it's apples to oranges, right? I think Emmanuel Forbes is just an interesting swing of the bat. I like him. I love the competitive fire. I love the athleticism overall. I love how he plays, just, fierce, competitive. It's just, based on who was there and when you got him, it just felt, again, like a little weird. For me, Forbes wasn't a top 3 corner in the draft, and he was the second corner off the board, actually. I liked Deonte Banks ahead of him, who the Giants got at 25. I like Christian Gonzalez, who the Patriots got at 17. Obviously, you were not going to be in play for Devin Witherspoon. But yeah, it seemed a little early and in front of some guys I happen to like better. But I think he's good. I think he's going to be a ball-hawking corner for you. I don't hate the pick so much. I just think it was a little early considering who else was there and considering some of the big potential red flags with him. Jack Campbell is another player I really like, kicking us off at 29 here. Listen, I just think that the way the Lions approached the draft, they took some of these, what are now being undervalued, or let me say devalued positions, and they really just didn't draft the way a lot of successful teams do in the first round. I can understand the angle of getting impact playmakers that are going to start for you right away, maybe, But I wonder, you know, how much better does Jahmyr Gibbs make the Lions right now? How much better does Jack Campbell make the Lions right now? I think they're very good players. I think potential plug-and-play starters in the case of Jahmyr Gibbs, depending on what you want to do. He's not going to be a short yardage guy. That's what David Montgomery's for. But with Jack Campbell, it just seemed early. And I liked 4 linebackers in this class. I liked Jack Campbell, Trenton Simpson, Drew Sanders, and then Dion Henley. And I just think different flavor for whatever you want. And I think especially seeing that 0 linebackers went throughout the rest of the first round, Jack Campbell at 18 feels a little bit early. And is it the best, again, use of resources to take a running back and then a linebacker in the top 20? It's just we see these positions fall, and maybe they wouldn't have, and maybe we wouldn't have had Jack Campbell because he was going to go at 20 or 19. To maybe the Bucs would have taken him. I just think it was a little bit early, given who else was there, given your needs, and I understand getting a linebacker, but it's just day 2 you can get someone that maybe is 98% of what Jack Campbell is, and you're just as good as a team. Good player, really like Jack Campbell, felt a little early. At 28, I've got Kalijah Kancey to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was surprising, really didn't think they would go in this direction. He's an undersized defensive tackle with elite burst and really pass rush ability. I like the way he's going to fit into Tampa. He's going to play probably over Greg Gaines, who's more of like a run stop type. And in your attacking 3-4, you have Vita Vea over the center. He's your nose tackle. So you maybe want some juice on the interior. Just you drafted Logan Hall in the top 35 last year. But I think Kancey's going to be a pretty good fit in Tampa. I think this was a team that could have gone in so many different directions. I thought tackle was probably the way they would end up going. It's a really, really big need for them right now. They settle on Kalijah Kancey. He offers pass rush on the interior. I think he's going to be a good fit on that defensive line. Thunder and lightning next to Vita Vea. 27 is going to be the Jets taking Will McDonald, the 4th pass rusher out of Iowa State at number 15. Surprised to see him go this early, but I'm a Will McDonald fan. I liked him a year ago when he was draft eligible. I thought he was going to declare then, ends up going back to Iowa State. I just feel like he was a little misused. He was playing mainly in the 4-eye alignment, which, for those who don't know, you're on the inside shade of the tackle. You don't really get to just attack off the edge and use his speed and bend. And that's important for an edge rusher with his capabilities, is if you're playing inside and you got to overwhelm and overpower somebody, that's just not really Will McDonald's game. When you can actually get him one-on-one, maybe even a wide 9 alignment, really get on a runway, really use his speed and his burst where he's an elite athlete and you can really show that, I think that's when he's going to be at his best. And you look at the Jets' defensive line, I really like what they're building. You have some question marks with Carl Lawson. Who knows if Bryce Huff is going to be there for much longer. But I really like John Franklin Myers and Quinnen Williams on the interior. You get Will McDonald offering you some speed off the edge. Jermaine Johnson on the other side, kind of the same deal. I like what they're building for the future. Didn't get a tackle, which your preferred tackle, it seems like was maybe Broderick Jones, was not on the board. So, the Patriots really moving out of 14, I think, caused some problems with the Steelers moving up for Broderick Jones. I think he would have been the pick to the Jets had he been available. Will McDonald Jr. is preparing your defensive line for the future. He'll probably be a rotational player at first and then earn more playing time, as you get to season 2, 3, etc. At number 26, we have Myles Murphy. At number 28 to the Cincinnati Bengals. I was surprised to see them go with an edge rusher. I thought if they were going to go defensive line, it was going to be on that interior, maybe get a little bit of pass rush, but Kalijah Kancey wasn't on the board. And I would say overall, I expected them to just go in a different direction. I didn't really think they would take a tackle here, even though that was highly thought to be the case. I thought corner, interior defensive line, or tight end, even running back was more in play. But no Jahmyr Gibbs on the board. Dalton Kincaid was off the board. Maybe you didn't really love Michael Mayer. You took a more valuable position in Myles Murphy in the first round. For the same reason that I critiqued the Lions, I'm going to give credit to the Bengals for doing that. I think it's just the way more successful teams build nowadays, and you look at what the Bengals have accomplished, and they are certainly moving in the right direction. They've had a number of really, really good draft picks, obviously, and they've picked high. So they needed to capitalize on those, and they did. Murphy's got really, really good upside, high potential player. Based on his tape, you're hoping for 2021 Miles Murphy over 2022 Miles Murphy. So he was just a better player overall. Right now, he's a lot of just athlete, just run at you, run through you, and he doesn't really have a developed pass rush plan. Needs to develop some counter moves. When just running into somebody doesn't work, you got to be able to, use your hands to fight through the block, and he really hasn't shown the ability to do that on a consistent basis. But I think as a rotational player, he's going to be good for the Bengals right away. And with his just sheer athletic ability, size, and strength, he actually profiles pretty well as a 3-down player, just still developing as a pass rusher right now. So maybe a 1st and 2nd down guy, and then you take him off the field and bring in somebody else on 3rd down, or you let him develop. He's a potential long-term starter for the Bengals. I think this was a pretty good pick. At number 25, I have pick number 26, Mazi Smith from Michigan. Really like the fit for Dallas. They were a team that needed to beef up the interior of their defensive line, and they did just that. Mazi Smith is a really, really good athlete, more run stop first than pass rush, but can offer a bit of pass rush with a bull rush, just pure strength and effort. Really like Mazi Smith, and I like him for the Cowboys. Obviously, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I think this is just good value for him. Maybe a little bit earlier than you'd expect to see him go, but I thought he would go somewhere in this range. Dallas, New Orleans, even Cincinnati. I thought those were kind of good landing spots for him. Goes to Dallas. I think it's fine value. I think he obviously fills a need. I think he's in the realm of best player available for them as well. So overall, just not too bad. I really like the fit here for the Chargers. Took Quentin Johnston at number 24. I just think, the value wasn't like exceptional or anything, but he was just one of the better receivers available. Didn't like Jordan Addison enough. You wanted somebody with, dynamic speed. That's not exactly Jordan Addison. You wanted somebody with fantastic run after the catch. And for his size, that is absolutely Quentin Johnston. Might be the best rack receiver next to Jackson Smith and Jigba in this draft. And he's 6'3", 6'4", offers you the ability to stretch the field. I think he's been a really, really nice option because people have compared him to Mike Williams. He's not Mike Williams. Mike Williams is your go up and get it, jump ball, 50-50, will bring it down guy. His 50-50 balls are 80-20. That's what Mike Williams is. That is not Quentin Johnston right now. He is more athlete than receiver, still developing the hands and actually catching with his hands as opposed to his body, but he's a very good receiver after the catch. If you told me that Quentin Johnston was the best receiver 3 years from now out of this draft class, it would not shock me. He's got a super, super high ceiling because of his athletic ability, because of his frame, and he's just a twitched up big receiver, which is kind of rare to find, and his run after catch ability is really something special for somebody of his size. Chargers get a big time weapon. There was thought maybe they would take a tight end off the board here, but Quentin Johnston offers you to put 3 receivers on the field simultaneously, Williams and Johnston on the outside, Keenan Allen in the slot, rotate Josh Palmer in and out, and you can find a tight end on day 2 if you want to do that, but you don't even have to. The Chargers are set up here. I like what this pick means for them. Jaguars came into this draft needing to address offensive tackle. Lost Juwan Taylor in free agency to the Chiefs, and then you find out that your starting left tackle Cam Robinson's going to be suspended for violating the league's substance policy. It is what it is. So you go in with a need, and the need is then exacerbated by Cam Robinson, even though it seems like Trent Baalke and the Jags knew about that for a while now, so it's not, I don't think they were incredibly shocked or floored that he was getting suspended. Anton Harrison is an athletic, pass protect first left tackle. I think he's going to play left tackle for the Jaguars. And I would even go out on a limb and say, maybe Cam Robinson's not on this team in a year. I don't know if that's saying all that much, but Anton Harrison, I think, is your left tackle. Maybe start him on the right away. But if Cam Robinson's suspended, why not throw him at left tackle, be the blindside protector for Trevor Lawrence? And I don't know that Cam Robinson earns that job back. Maybe you shift him over to right tackle. Maybe none of this ends up being true, but I would expect Anton Harrison to play left tackle for the Jaguars. They trade back a couple times and still get him. I really like what they did. At 22, I have the Bills taking Dalton Kincaid at pick number 25, jumping ahead of the Cowboys in order to do it. This was a top 10 player for Daniel Jeremiah in the draft. I like Dalton Kincaid quite a bit. Not quite that much to put him as a top 10 player. but he's a vertical threat at the tight end position, and there's thought that he's going to play kind of like an H-back role with with Dawson Knox staying in line. Dalton and Dawson's going to probably give me some trouble over the next year or so. But yeah, Dawson Knox is going to stay in his role, play in line. Dalton Kincaid going to move around, play in the slot, play out of the backfield. Versatile player that is one of the better overall receiving threats in this draft. Does not drop the football. Wins contested catch balls. Just one of the better players in the draft. You'd have to give him credit for that. They got him at 25, and it's not doubling up on tight ends here. It's just getting another playmaker into that offense. And you have Stephon Diggs. That is your outside, awesome route runner. Gabe Davis is a fine complementary number 2. And you're like, we need more weapons on offense. You have a tight end, but Dalton Kincaid doesn't necessarily have to only play in line. Put him in the slot. Again, run him out of the backfield the way that Brandon Beane is supposedly the GM of the Bills, or not supposedly the GM, but is the GM of the Bills. Supposedly said that's the way they're going to use him. So I think they have the vision, and I think one of the best overall receiving threats in this draft. You get him at 25, maybe an injury concern with him, but just a very good player. The Steelers traded up slightly for Broderick Jones. They jumped the Jets, who probably would have taken him at 15. They got their future franchise starting left tackle. He's got some of the highest upside in the draft, period, not just of the offensive tackles, but he was the last, I would say, like, real first-round offensive tackle still on the board. Obviously, Anton Harrison ended up going round 1, but I think the drop-off after Broderick Jones was a little bit more significant than it was from, Peter Skoronski to Darnell Wright to Paris Johnson Jr. I think Jones was up there near that top group. I think he was closer to them than he was to Anton Harrison. And obviously, if he, made it to the Jets, I think he would have been their pick. But they didn't take Anton Harrison for a reason. I think that kind of highlights that. But Jones is very good. He is just an uber athletic left tackle. He's kind of like that moldable ball of clay that you're still trying to develop. But I think for a team that needed to improve the offensive line so much over these past few years, they finally have with a franchise caliber left tackle. I really like Broderick Jones to the Steelers. What a story. Felix Onyedike-Uzomah, that's how you pronounce it, by the way. I heard a number of different pronunciations last night that upset me, but Felix Onyedike-Uzomah is how you say it, and he is apparently from Kansas City, obviously went to Kansas State, and gets drafted by the Kansas City, Missouri Chiefs. Pretty cool. And you picked there at 31, and you got a first-round caliber player, in my opinion. I really, really liked him coming into this draft cycle. He was someone that, you watched him tear up TCU. I think 4 registered sacks, but when I actually watched him, it was closer to 6. They took a couple away, I guess, but he was a dominant player at times. Read up on him a lot. I know about Felix Onyedike-Uzomah compared to, a lot of different players in this class. He is right at the top. He is someone that came to Kansas State with limited offers, was 200 pounds, has then bulked up to over 250, has been a dominant player at times for the Wildcats. He is a very, very good player. The Chiefs just didn't have to move up, just got their guy at 31. He's a very good fit for what the Chiefs want to do. They typically don't go for these guys like the Will McDonalds, the BJ Ojulari, the kind of slender, bendy edge rushers. Onyedike-Uzomah is a really good athlete, but he is built a little bit more sturdy the way Spags likes him on the defensive line. They needed to bulk up. They needed to beef up on the defensive line. I think they've done that. I love Onyedike-Uzomah. You knew the Packers were not going to take JSN at 13. You knew it. Maybe they would have taken a tight end there, but they just don't value the receivers in the first round the way they value the traditionally more valuable positions, and that is in the trenches. Lucas Van Ness at 13, I think, is fine value. He was a potential top 10 player in this class. He was being mocked around there for a while. And when you look at the player to team fit, there wasn't really a whole lot of better options than Lucas Van Ness to the Packers at 13. He is someone who has power for days. Basically, a lot of his approach as a pass rusher is speed to power. Get him on a runway, bulldoze the offensive tackle. Most players, even though he wasn't an every down player for Iowa, most players he went up against just could not handle the speed to power. Too strong, too athletic, and you look at the Rashawn Gary comp, you say that's a pretty good fit for Green Bay. I like him as somebody that can not only rush off the edge, but play on the inside as well. That's what I like Rashawn Gary as, and they've pretty much only played him off the edge, so maybe they have a similar plan for Lucas Van Ness. But I see somebody that can take the place of Dean Lowry, and I like Lucas Van Ness there a little bit better. Now, you can argue that the reason he looks so good all the time is because he was a rotational player for Iowa. He didn't play every snap. He gets to come in fresh, and he gets to abuse some of these offensive linemen. Maybe as an every down player, he wouldn't be able to do that, but I have high hopes for him. I think LVN is a really good fit in Green Bay. I think he's a really, really good athlete. I was not surprised to see him go this high. He is just a perfect fit for Green Bay. At 18, I have Darnell Wright, who was picked number 10 by the Bears. Plug and play starting right tackle. They're going to leave Braxton Jones on that left side. They were looking for a right tackle, and they got one of the better ones in the entire draft. Shut down Will Anderson. Now, I do have some concerns about Darnell Wright. There were some character things that came out pre-draft, but I don't know how his play is going to translate considering the offense at Tennessee. Hendon Hooker was just out of the gun, never dropping back. I think Darnell Wright was put in a pretty good scenario to be successful, and who knows if that's going to be the case at the next level. It's pretty good run blocking offensive lineman. I need to see it work, and I absolutely could see it working out. He's pretty high up on this list for a reason. They got him at 10. It's not like exceptional value or anything. They needed a right tackle. They got one. Everyone was waiting to see where I would have Bijan Robinson. How hypocritical can a guy be? Well, I know I'm a big Texas Longhorns fan, got the Ricky jersey in the back. Bijan, I'm sure will be joining them. I'm a huge Longhorn fan, and Bijan, I think, was the top 3 player in the draft. Loved Bijan Robinson. He's as good as a guy off the field as he is on the field. He is an incredible talent. You talk about receiving ability, probably the best in the entire draft, even with Jahmyr Gibbs there. As a runner, obviously the best in the entire draft. A pure bell cow. Here's the problem. You took him at 8. It is early, but Jahmyr Gibbs went at 12. It was interesting. I think Bijan was one of the better players in the draft, and I do not mind taking running backs in the first round. And I know you're saying they had other needs. They had other positions they could have filled there. Absolutely agree. 100%. But Bijan was a top player in the entire draft. For the Steelers, for example, I couldn't say that about Najee Harris. I liked him. He was my RB1 in that class. I couldn't say it about Najee Harris. He was not a top player overall the way Bijan was, the way Saquon was, obviously, even though, admittedly, Saquon at 2 was too early. 100%. I am on board with that. But Bijan at 8, you get the 5th-year option. That's why I like drafting running back in round 1. The 5th-year option gets you a running back guaranteed through their prime. Now, when you talk about extending that player, that's where you get to a gray area where there have been a lot of those that have not worked out. But with just 5 years of what could be one of the better running backs in the league, I'm on board with it. And it's not just as a runner. It's a 3-down player that can win in multiple different ways. Out of the backfield as a receiver, and obviously as a runner. He is a tremendous player, a tremendous talent, and the only reason he's coming in at 17, which may seem a little lower on the list, is just because it is a running back at 8 for a team that needed help on defense. Their offensive line's good. I think you're building an offense first, which I can get behind. Kyle Pitts, Drake London in there now, Bijan Robinson. They're building something on offense. That offensive line looks good. Brought back McGarry, have Chris Lindstrom, obviously. Jake Matthews still pretty good. They got a good line. They got good weapons now, and Bijan's probably going to get 350 touches as a rookie. It's going to be disgusting. What does this mean for Tyler Algier? It's Tyler Algier. He had a decent rookie year. Bijan Robinson is so far ahead, I can't even explain it to you. At number 16, I have the Saints taking Brian Brzee at 29. I like the value. I'm a big Brian Brzee fan. I would have been not surprised to see him drop out of the first round, but purely on a talent basis, it would have surprised me. I know there were some concerns with medical stuff, but I just see a guy who was not at 100% in 2022, and that's why I think he lost some of the hype. But when you look at Brian Brzee overall, you see his flash plays. You see one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire draft, right behind Jalen Carter, in my opinion. Brzee's very, very good. Really like him. You just don't typically see a guy that big move the way he does. For a guy that's, 6'5", 300 plus, he's bendy. for that size, has played off the edge and been effective at times for Clemson. He's a really, really good player. The Saints had to get better on defense. They addressed their interior of the defensive line. I like that, and I love Brian Brzee. I think he's got his best football ahead of him. Former #1 overall recruit, and goes in the first round for a reason. His upside is immense. Basically, smack dab in the middle, I have the Giants taking Deonte Banks at 24. He was my CB3 in the class. The Giants got him at 24. And I think in a really stacked CB class, that's pretty good value on him. Really like Deonte Banks, really good athlete, physical press man corner. Needs to get a little bit better in man coverage, has some pretty good chops in zone as well, I would say. I like the player. I really, really do, and I like his upside in the Giants' defense. And when you factor in that Emmanuel Forbes and Christian Gonzalez and also obviously Devin Witherspoon were off the board, I mean, this was absolutely the guy. He was CB3 for me, as I said, so I would have preferred him over Emmanuel Forbes at 24, and the Giants got him. They traded up to get him. They gave up a 5th and a 7th to move up one spot with the Jags, but I think they got their guy. Probably one of the few remaining first-round grades that they had on a player, and they fill a need while getting maybe the best player available. I just think it's the perfect marriage of best player available and need. I think they just married together at 24 to fit perfectly. Giants didn't want to lose out on their guy, traded a 5th and a 7th. Would have preferred not to, obviously, but they didn't want to take the risk of somebody else trading up. So completely understand it. At number 14, had the Ravens taking Zay Flowers at pick number 22. They needed more weapons on offense. I thought a corner would have been in play here. They decided to go a different direction. Good corners are still going to be available in round 2. So if you can find DJ Turner or obviously Joey Porter Jr., although I find that to be a little bit unlikely, but maybe it happens. Maybe Corey Trice, I think, would be a really good fit for Baltimore. There are options in round 2, in round 3 here on day 2 coming up. Zay Flowers was probably not going to be available in round 2 for you, or certainly not. He offers a ton of speed. He's an exceptional route runner with good hands. He's just undersized, 5'9", with not a hugely remarkable frame overall, as you'd expect of somebody that's 5'9". But I just really like the player. They just stuck there, picked him at 22, got more weapons on offense, more speed on offense. They're going to be tough to deal with. And kind of along those same lines, I loved Jordan Addison to the Vikings. He was somebody I really would have liked the Giants to get at 25. I think he might be the best receiver in the entire draft when everything is said and done. Quentin Johnston, highest ceiling, as I mentioned, but Jordan Addison's just a very, very good route runner. Biletnikoff winner a couple of years ago, best receiver in college football for that year, even though Jalen Hyatt won it this year, so doesn't exactly translate necessarily to the next level. But Jordan Addison is really good. Really good route runner, really good hands, not really a contested catch winner at this point in his career, but really good route runner, really good hands. If he gets open enough, it's not going to be a problem. And now for a Vikings offense that already had Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne's a good 3, but Jordan Addison is another really tough guy to cover. I feel sorry for those NFC North corners, and maybe that's why you'd see the Lions go with the corner on day 2, maybe the Bears as well. We'll have to see. But Addison, I just think, was great value. You stayed here, you picked him, didn't have to move up, you got your guy. I love the pick. These are starting to get confusing because at number 12, I have number 11, Peter Skoronski in the first round. I'll say that in a less confusing way next time. But I just like Peter Skoronski. I think he's maybe the best offensive lineman in the class, regardless of position. Profiles really well at guard, played left tackle at Northwestern, was really, really good. I've said it a billion times, but the shorter arms is a bit of a concern as to whether he can stay a tackler or not. I think he can do it just from a technical and fundamental standpoint. I look at Rashawn Slater, I look at Elijah Vera Tucker, and I see someone that can be effective at tackle in the league. I know AVT is a guard, but Rashawn Slater was able to stick a tackle and was very good. Northwestern, short arm connection. Skoronski's just very technically sound and also very good in the run game as well. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he's a people mover. He knows leverage. He knows where to put his hands. He knows to keep the pad level down. He's just a really, really clean prospect. And I think the Titans, who needed to upgrade on the offensive line, get a really good offensive lineman. Potential starter right guard or left tackle or right tackle. And you know what? Maybe even center. I think he can play all 5 spots across the offensive line. I think he's smart. I think he's tough. I think he plays the position extremely well. It's just a good pick. At number 11, I have the 5th pick in the draft, Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. He's a corner that I think can play on the boundary. Showed so at Illinois, but I think would be really, really good in the nickel. He is an attacker of the football. You can't throw it underneath on him. You can't really even run at him. He's going to make plays. Finds the football and jacks you up. Devin Witherspoon is a little bit undersized, 5'11", maybe 6 foot, 180 or so. Plays a lot bigger and a lot tougher than that. He is such a talented tackler, but is also super ultra competitive and can lock you down on the boundary as well. He's got good cover skills. He's a good athlete. And I didn't think the Seahawks would take a corner in the first round. It's just not typically what they do. But Witherspoon is a really good fit for them. You could potentially move him around as well. Just a really, really good player to a team that needed help at corner. I just didn't think they would do it in the first round, but they did. And I commend them for taking who they viewed to be the best player available. And I can certainly get behind it. He's a really good player. Kicking off the top 10, I have the Raiders going Tyree Wilson at number 7. Nobody really thought he would get to 7 pre-draft, and then you hear about a foot injury, but maybe it's not so bad if the Raiders were willing to take him with a top 7 pick. You have a guy who has maybe the highest upside of any player in the draft. Said that about a few guys, but he's another one that certainly fits the bill. Uber freak athlete. Now, not on the same level as Trayvon Walker, but right under that. Has freakish length at the position. Still developing as a pass rusher, but it just has a height, weight, speed, arm length profile that is just pretty rare to find. And for the Raiders who need help on the edge, this is the guy. I like it. High upside pick. Hope it works out for them. At number 9, I have the Texans trading up for Will Anderson at number 3. I thought about pushing this one down the list a little bit, just because they traded their own first-round pick next year to get him. It was just a lot. Now, the thought is that D'Amico wanted Will Anderson at 2, and that's what they were going to do. But Caserio, the GM, really wanted C.J. Stroud at 2. So Cal McNair, the owner, comes in and says, hey, this is the compromise we're going to make. We get both of them. We give up whatever it takes to do that. And they gave up quite a bit. They gave up a lot. Now, do I like Will Anderson Jr.? Absolutely. I think he is easily the safest player in this draft. I think he's just going to be very, very good. Maybe never like elite, but just a very solid player. You know, some scouts phrased it that Tyree Wilson is swinging for the fences to hit a home run. Will Anderson Jr. is guaranteeing a double. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. He's someone with shockingly bad burst off the line, but highly productive in the SEC. I mean, a tackle for loss and sack machine. And I think in the SEC, it matters more. I hate to give that line to you guys, but it's not the same as a player at Louisiana Tech, you know, putting up the all-time record for sacks. This is at Alabama against top competition, playing in the college football playoff every year, except for this one. He's just a very, very good, safe player. Very good with his hands, feel for leverage as well, bendy, just weirdly not super explosive off the line. Maybe that's coachable, maybe it isn't because he's a good athlete. I don't know. But just uber productive, very technically sound, and a really good player. You just moved so much to get him, otherwise he might be higher on this list. At number 8, I have C.J. Stroud at 2. You got maybe the second best quarterback in this draft at number 2. I think that works when Bryce Young was the first pick. It's not exceptional value. It's just you stayed there. You got a really, really accurate quarterback, potential QB of the future. What's not to like? And as I said, this is not a rankings video in terms of this is the best player, he's the number 1 guy. Because Bryce Young could be the best player in the draft. Easily. I think that's absolutely in play. He is a tremendous quarterback. Very accurate. Amazing extender. When I watch Bryce Young, that's the thing that stands out the most to me, is when he can make something out of nothing. And Alabama receivers did not help him out. Bryce Young frequently would be dancing in and out of trouble, in and out of traffic, making plays, boom, drop down the field. What's going on? Now, you hope that doesn't happen at the next level. Adam Thielen's a nice, I'd say safety net type guy. Terrace Marshall has a really good chance of exceeding his performance that we've seen so far with Bryce Young at quarterback. I just really like what the Panthers did. They stuck at number 1. Obviously they traded up, not really factoring that into the draft, as we've known that for a while now. Obviously traded first round pick, DJ Moore, top pick in the next year's draft. Obviously traded quite a bit to get Bryce Young, but they just got maybe the best player in the entire draft, QB of the future. Again, same thing with CJ Stroud. What's not to like here? And I really like Anthony Richardson here at number 6. Picked number 4 in the draft, and he's the 3rd quarterback off the board with the highest upside of any of them. He is the height, weight, speed freak that we've never seen at quarterback before. And like some of those guys are, height, weight, and good athletes like Josh Allen, like Cam Newton. Anthony Richardson is that, plus Lamar Jackson almost type speed. Cannon of an arm, and I think his pocket presence is underrated, and I think he's going to a perfect fit here. He's only a 1-year starter. He's a little raw, but I don't think he's as raw as some people are saying. I think he's going to end up being a good player. I like the fit in the Shane Steichen offense from what we see from Jalen Hurts. Shane Steichen was the Eagles offensive coordinator, now head coach of the Colts. Just feels like a really good fit and a player that I believe in, and I hope he develops, man, because if he does, he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He can run, he can throw, I believe, and I think we've only seen the smallest of it from Anthony Richardson. I hope he continues to develop, because if he does, if he reaches his ceiling, it is of the best quarterback in the league. So we'll see if he reaches that, but it's right up there. And then I thought JSN at 20 was just really good value. There was thoughts that maybe he would go as early as 9 to the Bears, maybe at number 11 to Tennessee, number 12 to Houston. Obviously, some things changed, and none of that ended up happening. Then maybe you think Jets at 15. Seahawks just stay at 20. They get their guy. Instant slot starter. Wide receiver 3 is so important in the Seattle offense. And now a receiving core that features DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and now Jackson Smith and Jigba as a run-after-catch monster. I love it for Seattle. They didn't have to trade up to get him. He fell into their laps at 20, maybe the best receiver in this draft. I think he's going to be the most productive receiver in this draft. Just a really good fit for Seattle, and you took him at number 20. Love it. Man, the Eagles sure had an interesting draft, didn't they? I'm going to put Nolan Smith at 4. I think if you had him at 10, you'd be pretty excited about that in the draft. Obviously goes at pick number 30. So I think when you talk about an uber freak athlete, which is what Nolan Smith is, maybe a little bit worried about injury. Maybe that's a reason why he falls. Maybe a little bit more athlete than anything else right now. But he has the ability to shed blocks. He's a powerful, strong guy. And I think still developing as a player. You talk about Brian Brzee being a top-rated recruit. Nolan Smith was, I believe, number 1 in his class as well. If not number 1, top 3, depending on where you look. He was very highly thought of. He's a great athlete, and he was showing development at Georgia. 2022 could have been a true breakout year for him if he was able to stay healthy. Pass rush win rate, pretty high, and he goes to a team with a lot of talent on that defensive line around him. We'll talk about another one of those guys shortly, as you can imagine, but you look at Jordan Davis. You look at, right now, Josh Sweat. You look at Brandon Graham, the veteran that's done it. You look at so many different players on this Philly defensive front that are just going to make his job even easier. Set up one-on-ones. Hassan Reddick is the player comp for Nolan Smith. And I wonder what team Hassan Reddick plays on. They just have so much talent. They can rotate guys in and out. It is going to be a problem for opposing offensive lines. Man, I would hate to be a fan of a team that has to play them twice a year. We're moving on. At number 3 on this list, I have a team that picked at number 3 when the draft started, ended up trading down to 12 and then back up to 6. It was an interesting draft for Arizona. Paris Johnson at 3 would have been a little rich for my blood, honestly. Probably would have been, ranked on this list somewhere around where Darnell Wright was. And he was at 18 on this list, if you recall. Paris Johnson Jr. at number 6, I think, is fine value. Maybe the best pure offensive tackle in this class. I think he's a safe pick. Has some developing to do, obviously, but has the length you covet at the position, is a good athlete, has good feet, checks off a lot of boxes at offensive tackle. I think Offers versatility on the line. Started at right guard for Ohio State historically. Played left tackle and is good. You trade down and then back up to get him. But the reason this ranks so highly is because of the trade down. Basically, you end up acquiring the Texans' first round pick next year, and you still got the guy you were probably going to take at 3. I think Monty Osenfort just really approached this draft in the perfect way for a new GM. Trade down when you can, be aggressive to get your guy when you can as well. And I think if you told me the Cardinals were going to walk out of this draft with a probable top 5 pick next year and it not being their own, I would have said, oh man, I'd love to see how they pull that one off. I don't see it. And they did it. So the Cardinals, who I don't expect to be very good in 2023, and the Texans, who knows? I don't. They have a lot of picks, man. They got some talent. Who knows, right? It's not a great division, but you might be looking at 2 top 7 picks next year, depending on how things shake up. Who's to say? It might be number 1 and number 2. It might be number 5 and number 12. There's some variation that could happen, obviously, but they're going to have 2 probable top 15 picks next year, and in a draft where you might be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know. Pretty good nuke replacement. Pretty good DeAndre Hopkins replacement. Pretty good weapon for Kyler Murray. And if you don't even like Kyler Murray, maybe the new GM wants to go a different direction. You pick at number 1, Caleb Williams. I don't know. That's pretty good. Drake May in that class as well. You're going to want teams, or you're going to have teams that are wanting to trade up. I think the Cardinals are set. If they are bad enough in 2023, I think they're going to be extremely successful long term, because it's not only the ability to draft really good players at the top. If they have the number 1 overall pick in 2024, which is a big if, teams will move up for Caleb Williams and Drake May. At least Caleb Williams. Very, very, very good. So you look at what the Bears were able to do. They got DJ Moore. They got multiple first-round picks. They got multiple top picks when you factor in a second round as well. The Cardinals are set up. Very interested to see how this 2023 year goes, but they are set up. And then I have Christian Gonzalez as my number 2. I just think he was the best corner in the draft, right up there with Witherspoon. It depends on what you want. If I want a guy that I think can stick on the boundary, Christian Gonzalez is the guy. If you want the guy that can move around, play in the nickel, can still probably stick on the boundary, Devin Witherspoon. But Gonzalez is a pure outside corner. He has the length that teams covet at the position. He is tall, fast, strong, developing ball skills. The only knock on him, and the reason why he potentially fell to 17, they're saying, is teams didn't know if he truly cared about football. Maybe he was more athlete than football player. And I kind of don't think Bill Belichick and the Patriots would take him if they didn't think he was going to, fit into their culture, or maybe they think they can build it around him. That's just a little bit of speculation as to why he may have dropped. Apparently didn't have a good visit with the Steelers either, and they went a different direction as a result. But when I don't really have access to any of that. I have access to the All-22. I watch the film, and I really, really like him. He is fluid. He is smooth. And that's a lot of what cornerback evaluation is seeing how well they mirror and match, and how well they move out there. And Gonzalez is at the top of the list and has the size that you don't normally expect of somebody that moves so well. Really, really good player. Perfect fit into the Patriots defensive system. He can play press man, and he can be a lockdown CB1 type player, and you got him at 17 after a trade down. Wow. Love it for New England. I think this is a great pick. Obviously, it comes in at number 2 for me. And at number 1, that leaves Jalen Carter, defensive tackle out of Georgia. Here's the thing. Jalen Carter has some noteworthy off-the-field issues. I heard maybe he's still racing right now. Little bit concerning, obviously. So if another team drafted him, I don't know how confident I would have been in putting him at number 1. But the fact that he goes to Philadelphia, which is becoming a culture of winning, they've been very successful over the past few years, and he gets to play with his Georgia teammates, Nolan Smith now. Obviously, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. I just think that Man, you really get a guy that was more dominant than anybody else in 2022. In 2021, he was right there. We've known about Jalen Carter. We've known about Jalen Carter for a while now. It was not a surprise to see him be hyped up like the #1 player in this class. Not at all. You know, in the Jordan Davis draft, guess who I couldn't stop talking about? Jalen Carter. He is uber talented. You just worry about the off the field and character stuff. That's the thing. That's why he falls to 9. The Eagles trade up to get him. I think they threw in a 4th round pick to Chicago. Whoop-de-doo. Maybe that 4th rounder becomes a Hall of Famer. But they didn't really give up a whole ton to go up and get maybe the best player in the entire draft. And I think he has a strong support system now in Philadelphia. And I don't think the Eagles would have taken him if they didn't feel good about that. And as a Giants fan, it concerns me deeply. I don't like it, but he comes in at #1. They got maybe the best player in the draft at 9. That's extremely valuable. And that is going to be this video. I know it's going to be one that gets people angry. I'm going to be called stupid. It is what it is. I'm going to go eat some paint or drink it, depending on what I'm feeling like. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.